Go ahead and do that as well. Oh, put that on top. Move up. I'm here. Okay. Turn this down. Alright, and send out the reminder. I'll do this earlier next time. Portal. Yeah. I think I got that right. I don't need to send out my stream key. Copy? Yeah. Let's see. Let me pull this back. Have our chat ready. Live chat. Okay, nobody's in here right now. Still a little latency. It's not too bad. Okay, good. The portal's being slow. Great. Wonderful. Hey, people actually shut up. Although that might not be. Okay. Just getting... Come on. Open up. Okay, so wonderful. Looks like the portal is screwed up. I'm gonna have to try and send everything manually, because I meant to send the reminder a little bit earlier. Oh well. Okay. So where is my... Okay. Okay. Make sure I got the right glass. Nope, everybody's gone. Cool. Oh, wrong class. Okay, wrong. Excuse me. Okay, so subject stream today. Class is beginning. Please show up as we are running normal hours. URL is as follows. That's right. Just had everybody's names. Live streaming. What are you? I mean, this is pretty on par for my usual beginnings of class. There we are. Alright. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Well, I guess we can start. Obviously, we're not going to bother with trying to do roll. Now, I think the whole concurrent viewer thing is up by 2 because I've got it on my main computer here, as well as the one I keep looking at over here to be able to do comments and such. Comment. Oops. Comment if you have any questions. Okay. So, yeah, that is still right bugger. And I just got a live notification for my own channel. Go me. All right. Anyway, it's just not gonna work. Okay, good. All right. Well, with that said, let's get started. I'll have a little bit to say at the end of class regarding the test that we weren't able to do. I have some plans for that, so we'll get to that. So moving on to our next chapter. Let me see. I don't know. See, I don't know how good my mic is on my thing here, so I figured I would just go ahead and do. Actually, while I'm here, let's make sure my mic audio is where I want it to be. Properties. Yes, good. Amazon headset. Okay. Yeah, this is just some cheap ass Amazon headset. It's great. It's comfy. Right. What was I doing? Oh, yes. I don't know how good the mic is on the computer here, so I figured might as well wear a headset. I've got one. It's not going to be affected by when I'm moving around, because I move around a lot. So let's go to... Yep, there's Leopold. We might get Leopold. Will we get Leopold today? I don't know. No, we got to talk about... Oh, God, we got to talk about India. It's going to be weird not standing up and walking around. We'll see if I can do that. Okay. Oh, good. People have left. All right, so this is chapter 20. 14, what's wrong with me? Imperialism Resistance, 1820-1914. This is post, Jesus, what we did last. I mean, everything is just bonkers for us right now in terms of this virus is just messing everybody up. So, we've had the unification of Germany and Italy. We've had the Franco-Prussian War terrify France, force them and Russia into an alliance against Germany, which has caused a shift in power within Europe. And then the technology, of course, of the Industrial Revolution going forward. So let's see what we're going to do with that. So, I don't know. This isn't too bad. So the waves of European empires, I mean, you could argue that there were other imperialistic things coming from Europe, but don't worry about it. Okay, so the Americas, that's a pretty obvious one. North and South America, um, more specifically North America. Well, I shouldn't say that. That's not polite to South America. Um, these were Neo Europes. I mean, how many places in just America alone are named New something? And if you look back to other places, it's like, oh yeah, this is just named after a place in like England or some other place in Europe. Um, and then if you go back to the older names, it's even more egregious. As we mentioned, Canada used to be called New France. Um, Mexico was just New Spain. Uh, I mean, obviously, we still have New England is just the name of the Northeast. Like that's lame. Um, so yeah. Anyway, these use the languages, religions, etc. from their European uh, motherlands. Uh, and if there was any available native or slave population that weren't wiped out, um, there would be a mix, a Creole European, non-European ancestry. We'll get into that a little bit later in regards to what that means for the people. Um, so after these various revolutions going on in North America and also the Iberian Revolution, we don't actually get much into that. Again, we leave poor Iberia alone. Um, a lot of these Europe's broke away, and then finally in 1823 we had the Monroe Doctrine. Again, there's not enough people in here. I'm assuming my sound's okay. The only issue I have with this headset, at least, is that on the lowest volume, everything's really loud in my ears. I hope the mic isn't too bad. Um. Anyway, the Monroe Doctrine, which basically said, "Hey, uh, you guys leave us alone. We'll leave you alone. You know, everybody just we're going to draw this line in the middle of the Atlantic and just hands off of everybody's stuff. So you don't mess with, say, the islands in the Caribbean, um, and we won't bother you with whatever other stuff you're up to." So as we're going to see in a little bit, once the scramble for Africa happens, once all this stuff goes on in Asia, well, America still gets involved. But for the most part, like we're not interfering, I guess you'd say. So with the Europeans not able to expand further into the Americas, which I mean to be fair, like excuse me, that had really been over anyway. Um, sure, you still had like say Alaska and parts of the Yukon. There was still exploration to be done, but that was to be done for the people that were on the continent. Um, this pushed the exploration back east into Indian Asia. Sorry, expansion and exploitation, not so much exploration, because this idea of uncharted lands was pretty much gone by this point. We were pretty sure of everything that existed more or less in the world. Antarctica, well, we'll talk about that later as well. Just ask H.P. Lovecraft, although he was towards the end of the century. Speaking of H.P. Lovecraft, so this is one of my favorite pictures of or depictions of England. So obviously we have England there in the middle with his little hat and his creepy face. I don't know. This might be. Sorry, I don't know if that. Hopefully that didn't pop up for us. No. Okay, go away, please. I don't care. So anyway, that's probably a prime minister. Again, some of this is very specific to the times. But anyway, we have England. Obviously, I think my mouse is visible. Yes, good. So it's got Ireland. I actually don't know what this one says. I don't know if I ever knew what this one says. It's like Heligoland? I'm not sure. We got Malta, Boersland. We'll talk about that later. That's South America. Gibraltar, Cape Colony, which is also South America. I don't know why, or South America, South Africa. I don't know why these are separated. Don't worry about it. Cyprus, Jamaica, Canada, India, and we've got a whole thing about the Suez Canal in Egypt. Because the Suez Canal wasn't just, hey, we're going to build a canal and be able to get to India easier. It's like there was a revolution in Europe. Jesus, I can't words today. There was a revolution in Egypt, and like it got overthrown, and then basically England took it over because they could. And not like with troops. They're just like, hey, you guys can't handle your own stuff, and we've got the money. So, yeah, it was weird. We'll get into that later. Speaking of the British Empire, the song, I guess you'd call it the British. Is it? I doubt it's still the British national anthem. It's very imperialistic. Hail Britannia. There's the line, the sun never sets on the empire wide. Because they've got, or at one point they had, land just everywhere. Now, this wasn't yet at the point that we're talking, but, Canada, these islands in the Pacific, these islands down here in the South Atlantic, which we'll get at that too. Australia, of course, New Zealand, we can't forget New Zealand, it still exists. Fiji, India, all these lands out here in Southeast Asia. So, yeah, my hands are still visible. No matter where the sun was, no matter what time of day it was daytime somewhere on a British bit of land. And this is 1897. So, they even have a little bit of Antarctica by this point. A very, very little bit of Antarctica, but a little bit of Antarctica. As you can imagine, we're going to talk a lot about Great Britain. So, now obviously, the first wave, that's something we'll talk about in the 101 and 102 courses, which I need to get ready for in the fall. But, they happened. Hey, Neo-Europes, all that good stuff. Cool, let's not worry about it. Well, after Napoleon, And after the Monroe Doctrine, the European powers were exhausted, nearly bankrupt. As we've seen, Britain recovered the quickest, had the world's most powerful navy, this big merchant fleet, and thanks to their massive empire, had the markets to take advantage of all of this. So, and then again with the Industrial Revolution having been happening since before Napoleon, they had the markets and the means to get their stuff to these markets for decades. Yeah, I mean, I've got to sigh about the British East India Company. Um, so they turned India from trade outpost into a crown colony. Now, some might say, "Hey, that's great. We went from let's trade some stuff into we now own this place," but a lot of people wouldn't see that as a great thing. And I mean, I'm not saying just the Indians that were there, who obviously wouldn't see that as a good thing. Um, Administering that much land and that many people, because I mean, India's a lot of people, you guys, even at this point in time. Um, it's a big ask. France and the Netherlands started branching out as well. They wanted to control trade, and again, like with Britain in India, uh, were taking land rather than just having trade routes. Okay, saw the number dip. Yeah, there's British East India Company from Empire Total War. Like I said, I did a lot of that. I spent most of my time there trying to take India. I literally wasted that entire century because India is a mess. But I avoided no. I avoided the American Revolution, so I'll consider that a win. What do you want? You want to get up here? Come on. Come on. Got my helper today. Um, the blue there is what the British actually own. Don't step on my computer, asshole. You know better than that. Um. Oh, we're lagging. That's not great. I don't know. Hopefully the sound is still good. Um. So the blue there is what the British own outright. While as you can see, the red is what was still technically under the ownership of the Indian princes, but they were dependent upon the British for pretty much everything. So, I mean, the British were in charge, period. And we'll get into what happens after this. But the issue is, it's being run by a company. And now, I mean, I'm sure by this point, for anybody paying attention, um, I have, oh wow, the quality has dropped dramatically. What's happened? Hold on. Can I do anything about that? My, my actual recording still looks fine. What's it look like? Oh, is it just frozen there? Jeez. Thanks, YouTube. I appreciate it. What? I don't worry about it. Okay. Um. to see. I think I can refresh my my stream without having to completely reset it. Okay, so yeah, be right back. Did it work? Testing, waving hand. No. Okay, whatever. Um. Okay, so uh, point here is that India, this massive it's called a subcontinent, not just. I mean, it wasn't a country because again, it was ruled by various princes and whatnot. Um, but it's this massive region with millions of people, and it's being ruled by a company. Like, I would say, oh, imagine Amazon ruling. I don't even want to think about that. So, not great. Let me see what the text looks like by comparison. Also, not great. Well, you guys have the text. I put it up on Blackboard. Okay. Um, this is just trying to get you guys some amount of further information. So, starting out, the colonies were sheer exploit. They existed to bring in money. And the way the colonies existed, they just wanted to take care of trade, let the companies do the thing. And they didn't want to move in and administer the land. I need to get a haircut, but needless to say, that's not going to happen. So, as I was saying, the whole, oh, well, we've got India now wasn't necessarily a positive move. Wasn't necessarily seen as a positive move for a lot of people in Britain. Okay. See if I can adjust this. Da, 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 da. Alright, adjust the CPU usage a little bit since we're not exactly running a high fidelity game or anything. Anyway, so initially, again, the colonies were about making money. As I had said before, colonies would be tooled to produce specific raw resources to fuel the economy of their motherlands. However, later colonies were just about prestige. Now, India did produce profit. It was seen as the crown and the jewel for the United Kingdom. Again, it was very expensive to administer. It was a headache in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying that as some kind of, pro-British, oh, the India was more trouble than it was worth. But, like, from the British standpoint, it kind of was. But they managed to make more money than they spent running this thing. However, a lot of colonies were just drains on the economy. They didn't turn any kind of profit. Hey, girl. Um, and with those that were late to the colony rush, like Germany and Italy, they would get colonies just to prove that they were great powers, that they had a place in the sun, which is actually a quote from a German diplomat, I believe. So, oh yeah, I've got a book open in my lap. I should have known better. Um, well, I'm not turning the pages anymore, am I? Anyway, and this again leads to the scramble in Africa, which we'll get to momentarily. Um, so again, profit, prestige, and then once the native populations decided, wow, these European powers really suck, and started trying to kick them out, the claim from the Europeans was made that, oh no, the reason we're here is that we're benefiting these people. We're bringing, quote, the light of civilization to these poor, backward races all around the world. And I mean, that was the same argument that was made here in the United States about keeping around slavery when everyone else in the world had, well, I can't say everyone else in the world. We will talk about you, South America. Most everyone else in the world had gotten rid of it. It's like, oh no, we're helping them. Like, are we really, though? Are we really? Ah, yes, India. Okay, so. Um, the British like to simplify major issues into very small, really innocuous terms. Um, as I may have mentioned before, the Civil War in Ireland uh, was just known as the Troubles. Um, so saying India was a long-term project for the British is a massive understatement. That's a very British thing to say. That's probably why I wrote it that way when I put this together. It's been a few years now. Um, don't attack my cord, please. Uh, so as I mentioned, they had trading posts, um, and as I mentioned with the 7 Years' War, um, they would ally with local princes against the princes that would not ally with them, in particular those that allied with the French, because British and French. Um, the British East India Company would lead armies consisting of sepoys, which is the term for native Indian troops. I don't think that's a slur. I really hope not, because it's used in the book a lot, and I just hope it's a term. Yeah, it's got to be just a term. Um, but using these native troops under the employ of the company itself, they began conquering uh, India. I've got a lean forward cat. This is my little turd head. This is Toru. Hello, Toru. I guess this is one good thing about working from home. Anyway. Uh, so by 1833, as we had seen, there had been a shift in the politics of trade. Um, so this idea of monopoly and tariffs and mercantilism and all that went away in favor of free trade. So the British East India Company couldn't just dominate everything in India in terms of trade. So instead, they became the governing body. Which again is like, what the hell? They began, quote, helping or helping to civilize the Indian natives, to again help them and to open further markets for trade. This was something that a professor of mine often quoted was the British were, let's say 1833, probably not as early as this, but later on in the 1800s, the British were making Singer sewing machines, the brand of sewing machines. Um, and they wanted to be able to sell sewing machines. And they had a massive population of people in India, but the people in India didn't have any need to use sewing machines. So they needed to civilize the Indian natives enough that they needed sewing machines. Now, obviously, it wasn't just for the sewing machines, but that was literally the case for most of what went on in India. And I feel like a lot of people who are from India, who are aware of the Indian history, would be like, yeah, that's how it is because the British were fucked up. Here's a slur. Um, this is still used today. Um, the Babus were mixed Anglo-Indian heritage. These were, those that were born of the English and the native Indians. When I say native Indians, I mean obviously India. Don't. Some people still consider Native American. That's dumb. Anyway, but this was again because of the massive population in India. This wasn't just like a small group of people off to the side. This was an entire like class within India. Um, they were seen as being better than the natives because they had some amount of Anglo heritage, but still not quite Englishmen because obviously they still had native heritage. So they were sort of a middle class to work as intermediaries. I know, an entire group of people based on their heritage to work as intermediaries. It's British. Might have a picture. Hold on, I'll get to that in a minute. They're also in South Africa, which was Cape Colony, and had to deal with the Dutch farmers that were already there. The Boers. We'll get to the Boers. That's a whole separate war. Where you going, kitty? Fine, be that way. Ugh. Oh, we're not actually there yet. Oh no, we're not going to talk about India proper for a little bit yet. Okay, never mind then. So anyway, here are your typical sepoy soldiers. Good proper East Indian Company sepoy soldiers. In their standard dress uniform with their rifles and their pickaxes and their hand axes. I mean, there you go. I don't have much more to say to it than that. Okay, real quick. So, the, this thing. Where's it at? How's my, the quality still garbage? Why is the quality still garbage? I'm gonna turn up the thing again real quick. Output. I don't know. Give me that many. Okay, maybe that'll help. Anyway, so the Anglo-Indian people, that term's still used today. Apparently there is, well, again, this was years ago, when I was just doing Google searches, because when I would, make these PowerPoints, I would then go through and try and find images just to throw in a few of the slides to make it a little more interesting. Um, and sorry, it's distracting having cats running around. um, anyway, apparently at the time, again, this was 5 years ago now. There was someone running for, probably wasn't prime minister, just someone in parliament, who was accused of being able to get as far as he did because he had Anglo heritage, because he was a Babu. And that's seen as like having some kind of advantage in India. Like people are treated better. So it's like a revert. I guess it's a reverse slur. Like you're treated better. You're seen as better. I'm not sure. I might be completely wrong there. It might be the opposite. But like, if from what I remember reading, it was implied that he got as far as he did not because of his expertise excuse me, as a politician, but because of his heritage and people giving him extra for that. Hey. On my phone. Hey. Watch out. That's not completely on my leg, ding-a-ling. Okay. Alright, so on to Africa proper. Well, again, this isn't the scramble for Africa just yet. We'll get there. Because, oh boy. So, Charles X. This is the, obviously, we can at least read the title at the top there. Obviously, I'm going to, well, a couple of things here. One, this PowerPoint's on Blackboard, so if you guys can see it here, you should be able to grab it on Blackboard. Two, I'm going to do this class all over again. Hey, girl. At 10 o'clock, so, and upload the video. So, maybe I can get the quality to work better. So if you want to just check that video instead, we'll see what happens. Anyway, so the French king Charles X, trying to prove, hey, France has still got stuff, began trying to take Algeria in 1827. Now, it took them 3 years to capture the capital, Algiers. Now, Louis Philippe attempted to capture the hinterlands, which took his entire reign. And in 1831, excuse me, he created the French Foreign Legion for the sole purpose of raising troops to fight in Algeria. So, the French Foreign Legion, which you guys may have heard of, was originally created because of this. Now, Algeria fought a lot and quite well against the French, led by Abd al-Qadir, I believe is how you pronounce his name, who was finally defeated in 1847. And in 48, they made Algeria part of France, gave representation in the National Assembly. However, only the colons, or the French settlers, were the ones who were given the representation. So it's like, okay, Algiers, I know we've been fighting you for 20 years now. So we're going to make you part of France and give you representation, because that whole thing is the reason why England and Ireland have been fighting for centuries. Okay, cool. But only the French settlers there get any representation. Which, I mean, is how it was in Ireland. It's like, hey, we'll give you some representation. Okay, cool. But only the English can vote. Okay, wow. Fuck you, England. So there's Algiers. This is the northern part of Africa. Let me see how clear that is. Not great. Spain's there up at the top. Sponge. This is all in well, you can't really see that there at the bottom. This is all in French. What are you doing, cat? Sit down and relax. So they were able to take the coastal cities relatively easily. These darker colors here, the earlier conquest, but then moving south through the country, it was quite a slog. Okay, so let's talk about when Britain became an international drug pusher. So the Opium Wars. Oh, Jesus. Nothing's ever happy. Okay, I think I know where we'll close out today. So, the British wanted tea. Damn it. As my British history professor would say. But in China, they were given unfavorable trade. The Chinese only wanted raw currency, which is to say, we don't want any of your shit, Britain. The British could not trade them wool because the Chinese had silk. So who wants wool when you've got silk? I mean, I guess the British had cotton from the textiles, but again, the Chinese had silk. So, I was right in the microphone. I apologize. And so yeah, the Chinese only wanted gold, pure raw currency. Well, silver probably at this point. Which was not good for the British treasury. But the only place to get the tea that the British wanted was from China. Quick side note: the reason, well, you may not know this. So it's stereotypical that the British drink tea. But the continent, the French and the Germans, and I believe the Spanish. I don't know if this is as common in Spain. But I know the French and the Germans especially are known for drinking coffee rather than tea. And the reason for this was after the Napoleonic Wars, and once Britain just completely conquered, just had all the trade, they realized that coffee was more expensive than tea. So they would keep the tea for Britain and sell the coffee and make the bigger profit off the coffee and just use the tea for themselves to again make the bigger profit. But then it got to this point. Like, what the fuck, Britain? The British never do anything halfway. Like, we're going to talk about some really atrocious stuff that the Europeans do for other resources, but I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, because it might have happened, but I don't think the Germans or the French ever went to war over coffee. Anyway. So, the British finally found an end with opium. The thing about opium is that it was legal in Britain, but not legal in China. Opium is basically unprocessed heroin. And also, if you ever want to, if you've ever read an Edgar Allan Poe novel or short story and wondered, man, I wonder what this was about, opium. Or why this happened, just opium. Anyway, there was an underground opium economy in China because, of course, I mean, if something's illegal, it just means it's pushed underground. Anyway, the British took advantage of it. By 39, the Chinese emperor appointed, I used to be able to say this properly because a girl in one of my classes knew fluent Chinese and corrected me on a number of pronunciations. Lin Zexu? It's not Zexu. It's... Anyway. He was to stop the opium trade, and he was more than happy to stop it. Brought a bunch of the opium into the warehouses and set them alight. Now, needless to say, anybody downwind of this had a good time. And also closed markets entirely to British goods. So the British responded to, hey, we don't want your drugs in our country, to bringing in gunboats and beginning and ending the First Opium War. Because the thing about China is that they were on top of the world for such a long time. And they really were. They were the world's economy. They really had no reason to advance. So their boats were almost medieval by comparison. So the British rolled in with their gunboats and just tore them apart. So the Treaty of Nanking, Nanking, 1842, set up treaty ports, gave Hong Kong to Britain, which went back in 1999, and established extraterritoriality. Basically meant any British in China were not subject to Chinese law. This resulted in a lot of abuses of native Chinese in these ports. The treaty ports basically meant that the British owned these ports to an extent. Lots of stuff due to this literal drug pushing. But wait, there was a sequel. A 4-year opium war had the British, French, Russians, and Americans, because of course we're going to get involved, jumping in and beating the crap out of China to get some trade for ourselves. Legalize opium and Christianity, which just it's not a religious thing in China. It's a cultural thing. And giving Russia Vladivostok, which was a much needed ice-free port. We'll talk about Vladivostok, a little bit later as well. That's going to be an issue in World War One. So there's that guy. Yeah. So these were the Chinese ships compared to the British ships. Although this looks like a British ship exploding, I think. Although it's red, it might be a. Yeah, I think it might be a junk exploding. That's just a mass blowing off. So yeah, I mean, the ships could hit these ships before they could even get anywhere near in range. It was bad. Yeah, destroying the Chinese war junk. It's just. Here's some good racism. And when I say good, I mean like. Boy, it sure is a good thing stuff like this doesn't exist anymore. Yes. Quality, vintage Chinese racism, too. So we've got, China as the defeated dragon. Not that it had been a dragon for a while at this point. There in the middle. You've got the British lion on the right, the Russian bear on the left. Italy is a wolf. That is really kind of whoever drew Italy. Austria is the two-headed vulture. Germany is also a vulture, which is also unkind. Germany is a bit more than a vulture. Japan is this leopard. I don't know who's the. I guess is France supposed to be the rooster? That's not very nice. And then America is the bald eagle on the back. But we were definitely in the middle of everything, just as much as everybody else was. But wait, there's more. This one is just as bad. These were all the various leaders at the time. Queen Victoria. I believe that must have been Kaiser Wilhelm. I don't remember who was in charge of Russia at the time. Oh, it would have been Tsar Nicholas, I guess. Now obviously rather than one of our presidents, because you can't do that. That's just Lady Liberty there looking over her shoulder. Oh no, not Lady Liberty. That's is that France? No, we're involved. That's Lady Liberty. And then just the really racist, like almost Klingon looking Japanese man over there to the right, and then the Chinese guy in the back, like, you guys need to cut this shit out. Okay. Speaking of picking on East Asia, so America sent Commodore Matthew Perry to force Japan to open its ports to trade. And by force Japan to open its ports, I mean we sent gunboats like Britain did in China. So again, like this is stuff people go to war for that we're just doing because nobody else would stick up for these guys, and we felt like they couldn't back it up. However, by the 1860s, the Tokugawa shogunate fell, and the Meiji Restoration happened. Now, the Meiji Restoration wanted to undo the shogunate and get rid of this idea of just letting the Western world come in. So in the 1870s, they began borrowing ideas and techniques from Prussia because, Prussia was a rapid up-and-comer. So they actually took the Prussian Constitution and it's like, hey, we're going to borrow this and use it. And they did. And by 1900, they had their own industrial economy and kicked the Europeans out. There's Matthew Perry. He looks like that that wax guy. I don't even remember his name. I'm such a good history professor. You know who I'm talking about. Commodore Matthew Perry doesn't look alive, is what I'm saying. Anyway, yeah, the Meiji Restoration is a major point in Japanese history, and there is much, much, much writing on it, both of the historical variety and like fictional. Like it's not just a historical event; it was a cultural and very like personal event for a lot of Japanese because it was a changeover from it was their Renaissance, Enlightenment, and Industrial Revolution in like 3 decades rather than over the course of several hundred years. Because, the shogunate was still basically medieval. And then the Meiji Restoration was like, bam, industrial. Alright, let's get a little bit further. Let's talk about some awful stuff before we finish. The Russians in the Caucasus. So, the Russians had what would become Alaska, at least for a little bit. But it was much closer and more lucrative to head south towards the Black Sea. Now, I mentioned that getting to the Black Sea was a big deal because then they could sail through the Straits of Dardanelles and get to the Mediterranean, and boom, hey, we've got access to the Atlantic. That's a big deal for the Russians. And that's a big deal for any European power. So Catherine the Great, as I said, pushed for this, cutting deals with local rulers, redrawing the map to suit her needs, that sort of thing. In 1821, Mikhail Vorontsov, who was in charge of the Black Sea region of New Russia, began modernizing the region, building libraries and schools, which of course helped the urban elite accept Russian rule. They also brutally cracked down against rural populations because reasons. Oh, did I freeze? Oh no, okay. Muslims and Caesarians, which I think it's Circassians, just not Orthodox Russians. Dagestan and Chechnya fought the Russians for generations. In fact, it's still happening today. Despite the fact that Russia routinely commits ethnic cleansings, wars, and expulsions on the people there. It's really bad in Dagestan and Chechnya. Chechnya is basically shorthand for Russian atrocities against, native populace. Because, again, it's still happening today. We talk about Ukraine and Georgia and all of that, which, is relatively modern. And in the last years modern. I'm not saying relatively modern, but Chechnya, it's still hot there. Chechnya is still dangerous. So there's the region. I'm sure on this screen it's going to be nearly impossible to see. It's still kind of a mess anyway. Let me just bring this up. Yeah, so there's Dagestan and Chechnya. There's Georgia, which that becomes a thing in the 21st century. So between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea, it's just this little region. Ah, yes, I was going to say the brutal governor general of the Black Sea region is like, oh no, wrong, brutal dictator. There he is. Okay, we'll do the Sepoy Rebellion next time. Anyway, before I let you guys go, I mean, the Sepoy Rebellion is literally the last thing on this section, but it's very important, and I feel like I should spend more than a few minutes on it. Or should I go ahead and do it? I should go ahead and get it done, because I'll have time for it in the other class. So I'm going to go ahead and get it done. Alright. Then we'll talk about what I got to do in a minute. Right. So, as we mentioned, India was this model colony, turning big profits, etc., etc. However, in 1857, there were rumors that the cartridges that the rifles that were being used by the sepoys, the cartridges were about yay big, and basically you'd bite off the end and pour it into the rifle. It had the powder and the charge and the bullet all in a single package, but obviously for it to all flow properly, it had animal fat in it. Now, the issue became there was rumor that the cartridges used either cow fat, which was sacred to the Hindus, or pig fat, which was seen as unclean to the Muslims, and since the two major religions in India is either Hindu or Muslim, that's an issue. So in May, 85 soldiers were sentenced to 10 years hard labor for refusing to use their cartridges, and the lead objector was hanged. This caused a big issue in India. The whole thing raged for a year and a half. There were atrocities on both sides. The British had this whole thing about, oh, we were beset by the savages. It's like, yeah, were you really, though? I mean, war is hell, but you did also kind of start it. What do we got? Outside email, trouble getting... Cool. Okay. Yeah. But British rule was never really any real danger. Now, when I say atrocities for the British, one of the ways they would execute prisoners... Well, let me just put this in the context. For the Hindus, one of their beliefs, and again, this is very, very basic, don't quote me, but one of their beliefs is that to properly reincarnate, your body needs to be put to rest in one piece. I think that's how it is, right? Your body needs to be in one piece is the thing. That's the whole issue. It's like, you bury in one piece, or you're, I don't even think they buried actually. You're cremated, as long as you're all together. So what the British would do is tie the the mutineers to the fronts of cannons with their backs to the cannons and set off the cannons, and they'd go everywhere. But following this, Parliament took direct control over India's administration. So India was now in the control, or under the control of the British government rather than the East India Company. But this idea of modernizing their civilization died out, or at least it changed to a degree. So real quick, here's the rifle. This is you got your powder and your bullet and the grease and all of that. This shows how it's done. Again, it should all be on Blackboard. I'm sure I've got. And here's the British like, oh no, we're being overrun at the ramparts. But for some reason, there's like a woman and a child here. I don't know. I could talk at length, but I'm not going to. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a minute. Real quick before we get done. Then I gotta start answering emails because people are concerned. Okay, so the test that we weren't able to do. I know I gave you guys a study guide and we went over it and all that good stuff. So what I'm going to do, what I plan on doing, obviously it's going to have to be a take-home, but I can't just send you guys the test as is because it'd just be too easy. So, I know, it's like, oh, well, that'd be fun. Well, I can't. I'm not allowed to. You know. I'm sorry. So, what I have to do is basically put it in essay form. It won't be too bad, I promise. I mean, it's like, give me a couple of paragraphs for each question. So what I'm going to do, what I plan on doing, I still haven't converted it, I still haven't gone through yet. But what I plan on doing is basically getting 9 questions, 3 from each chapter. Yeah, because there's 3 chapters. 9 questions. You choose 4 and write about those. So A, it's easier for me to grade because that's easy to, put 4 or maybe 5. I'll decide when I put it together. Either way, you don't have to do all 9. But the point is, I'm going to do, the same amount from each chapter. You choose some of those based on what you're most comfortable with. And we'll go from there. So I'm going to try and put that together this weekend. I'll give that to you hopefully next Thursday, so you guys can work on it over the weekend and send me the answers by the following Tuesday. But since we're doing this online and you guys can take the test at home, it's not really going to interfere with this. So that's all I've got. If there's anybody actually in here that has any questions, hit me up now. If not, I'm going to turn this off for a few minutes, get myself some water, answer some emails, and do this all over again in about 15 minutes. Actually, I'm going to get some water right now because I can. What do you want, cat? Come up here. Well, come on. Don't just sit there and meow at me. Come here. That's what I thought. Anyway, yeah, so that should do. I'm going to stop the stream, upload it. Hopefully I can get the next one to be better visual quality. I hope the audio for this one's behaving. Don't bite me, please. And we're gonna figure this out as we go forward, I hope. What? You're dingling bird at me. That's Otto. Anyway, yeah, I need to go down here. Yeah. Catch you folks. God, it's Thursday now, isn't it? Next week. Have a good weekend. Be safe. All that good stuff. If you weren't able to, if you're, there's nobody in here. There's somebody in here. If you weren't able to show up for this class, and you want to watch. What? Don't bite. I'm doing this again in just a minute. So, all right. Back in a minute. Bye.